Cascade Union is the major model railway layout of the Sydney N-Scale Model Railway Club. We've now been building this layout for 4 years. And the first 3 years, details of the build are in the link in the top right hand corner. As of December 2022, we had built all of the lower level. We had built the benchwork in this room, the south room, and laid the mainline track, and had built the benchwork, or most of the benchwork, in this room. But the mainline track only went down as far as the end of this room. The trackage on the other side of the peninsula had not been built. However, we had also built the Helix that you see, and what we needed to do was to connect the main line along the bottom row and then up to the Helix. In January 2023, we finished laying all of the benchwork on the middle level. We immediately started laying track, so that by February 2023, the entire main line on the middle level was completed, wired and operational. We could now run across both levels. Then in March, we started trying to put in some lights on the lower level. Some were successful, some not. By June 2023, we'd started putting in some of the scenery. Initially, it was just putting buildings in to get a feel for what the layout was going to look like as we went forward. We also ensured that we put in the fascia because we wanted it to look complete. The buildings you see here are just been laid out. We haven't got no track on that area laid at all. And you can see from this shot, still a lot of benchwork and track to be laid on the middle level. The lower level hardly changed because we almost completed that. But as we head round to the north wall of this room, you can see that there is scenery on the middle level, and there is actually a new yard called the Frank Grace Yard, which had actually been fully scenicked. We could still see some of the Helix because we'd put some of the fascia on the lower level, but we'd also started doing the last of the scenery on the lower level. By December 2023, in a general view of the layout, very little has changed from the June shots. However, what you will see when we move on to the individual sections is that there has been quite a bit of work done. What we found with the middle level is that it is very different from the lower level. The lower level is primarily mainline trackage, a couple of small stations, and lots of scenery. Once the main line had been laid down, we had just scenery to add. But the middle level consists of 4 main yards, a branch line, and a couple of minor yards. A lot more track to be laid. And it has been the laying of the track on the yards that's taken up our time. You can see actually at this point, you can see a Y, and that will lead into one of the major yards. At the moment, our only marshalling yard is Frank Grace Yard, and that's a small one. It's there to support the branch lines that we have running off the other end of it. So now, let's have a look at some of the individual sections of the layout, and you will see the actual amount of work that we've prepared. We'll start off with Seattle. And as you can see, in March 23, track load scenery put into rough spot. By June, ballasting of the main line had been completed and the major yards. And by December, all the track has been ballasted. And you can see the township there is starting to really start looking to be like a good township. And a lot of the base scenery has now been completed. We now move on to the last of the lower sections, the North Helix. This area had not been scenic, but by May, the initial base scenery had been put into place. And then in August, even more detail. And finally, by December, the scenery around the North Helix on the lower level has been completed. With the completion of this section, the entire lower level now has scenery over the entire level. There's still lots of detailing to be done, but all of the main base scenery has been completed. Frank Grace Yard commenced development in April 2023. May, the track had been laid, and by June, we'd actually done the scenery. The reason? We were doing an official open of July 23, and we needed to have it all completely scenic. The attached town, Beena Junction, and later just called Beena, has also been developed, with the scenery added, and a little bit of street running provided for. By October, most of the scenery had been done for Beena Junction. Now in December, the town is probably at about 80% complete. Again, lots of detail still to be applied. The buildings at the back still need to be detailed, but the town is recognisable as a town. Flowing on from Beena is Dawson Creek. This area was originally called the Twig, as it is a branch off the branch. But we soon labelled it Dawson Creek as the name of the station. The track was very quickly laid down and the buildings started to appear. And by October, most of the scenery had already been in place, although the track still has to be ballasted. This is going to be a very busy little industrial area. Lots of work for our operations. The industrial area of a town called Jeffery is a hard one to describe. It basically is a series of buildings along the back wall of the layout and is supported by a branch which runs from Frank Race Yard through Beena Junction and then back around to form the branch. Still a fair bit of work to be done as far as scenery is concerned. Some of it's done because it's part of the Frank Race Yard and Beena area. So some of the scenery has been completed. There's other still yet to be done. We now come to the industrial area of Feltonville. And you can see here the Feltonville yard, the track was actually laid off the layout. Because part of the design of the benchwork was that we had to be able to pull it off, do the work and then put it back in. The yard is now fully operational. All points have been wired in, all the track wired up. And some of the scenery has been roughed in. Not much to be seen here. Still a lot of development work to go on. The final town to be looked at is Kerr's Plains. And very little has happened to Kerr's Plains for most of the year. It wasn't until August that we actually started to plan out exactly where the track was going to go. And then that's where it sat for a while. Until November, when again boards were taken off and the track laid off the layout. So by December, all the track has been laid. However, it still has to be wired up and then we could commence work on the scenery. So now our plan for 2024 is to finish the yards, add in the 2 major station yards of Spokane and get a lot of the scenery done. Let's see how we go. If you've liked the video, please click on the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, we'd love to have you along, so please hit on the subscribe button.